When did you know you were poly? That's what we're talking about today. So, this is going to be a little bit of a get to know you. If you're new here, I'm Jen. I'm a holistic family consultant and I help queer, non monogamous, and neurodiverse families develop relationships based on consent and connection where everybody gets their needs met and can thrive without pathologizing any part of themselves. So, every time I have a parent group for my non monogamous parents group, there always seems to be a theme, even though we don't go in with an agenda. And this last time we met, the theme seemed to be that we were a group who had all figured out that we were naturally non monogamous at a very young age. So for me, I remember being in maybe late elementary school and being at a sleepover. And I remember a specific sleepover with a specific group of girls. And, we were all in our boy band phase. And somebody was like, "So, which member of this boy band are you going to be stranded on a deserted island with?" And I was like, those three. and and they said, "You have to pick one." And I was like, I don't understand what you're asking. And that was the moment. And if I had had words, I would have known at that moment that I was polyamorous. I didn't have words. I didn't know that was a thing. And I sort of muddled my way as a teenager and as a young adult, in high school and college, through non monogamous relationships at a time that I really didn't have the emotional maturity to be in one healthy relationship, much less more than one. And I also didn't have any kind of ethical framework for how to make sure that everybody was actually okay with what was happening. And so, unsurprisingly, a lot of those relationships blew up in my face or didn't last very long. And so then I thought that the problem must be the non monogamy rather than the lack of emotional maturity. And I did monogamy for a long time. And so that brings me to one of the things that is like kind of a hotly contested, sometimes misunderstood idea in polyamory, which is like, is this an identity or is this a choice? And I want to give you a little bit of a both and. So, and clarify something. So, the first thing I want to clarify is that even if who you are is an identity, you still have choice about the actions you take. And that's true with any kind of an identity. So for me, polyamory is an identity. I have realized I'm not capable of only being in love with one person in the long term. At any given moment, I might be, but I will continue to fall in love with more people. And I can't stop myself from doing that. That's how I naturally am. And I am at my happiest and most thriving when my relationship structures reflect that natural part of myself. But I can choose whether or not to engage with a particular person. And that certainly was true when I was doing monogamy, that even though I would become emotionally attached to other people and fall in love, even though I didn't use those words at that time, I was in a lot of denial, but I would choose to not do anything about it, to not act on it because that was the line that had been drawn with my monogamous partner. And now that I'm no longer in monogamous relationships and I can choose to date and physically engage with whoever I want, I can still choose not to because I still have choice about my actions. And that's a really important clarification, especially for people who are outside of this world. The polyamorous people are like, oh, obviously. But it's something that I see on the outside all the time is like, oh, if you fall, because there's this idea, this mononormative idea of like you fall in love with your one person and then you're happily ever after forever with that one person. And so if you fall in love, then you have to be together forever because that's your person. And when we get rid of that idea that there's only one person for your whole life that you're going to fall in love with, then we can also get rid of the idea that just because you fell in love with somebody means that X, Y, and Z have to follow from that. So you can still choose. And this is something I talk about with clients all the time. When they're like, I love him so much. I love this person so much, but it just seems like it's a bad idea. And I'm just constantly hurting in this relationship. And so are they. It's like, yeah, you can love someone and also know that having a particular structure of relationship with them is not good for you. That's actually super possible. And that's not just a polyamory thing, that's a healthy relationships thing. That's called boundaries, and it's called knowing um, that you're not going to sacrifice what works for you just because you have feelings about somebody else and you care for somebody else. And you actually can't be in a healthy relationship if you're sacrificing what's good for you because of what somebody else wants. So, as far as whether or not polyamory or non monogamy in some format is an identity or a choice, what I hear from people is that there are a lot of people who are like me who once they find out this is a thing are like, "Oh yeah, that's who I am and I can't be otherwise." That's an identity. That means it is fundamentally a part of you. You were born this way, you'll die this way. No matter how much you choose not to act on it, you can't stop being that. Right? That's an identity. And I also hear from people for whom they're like, I could do monogamy. I wouldn't mind if I was, only in a loving relationship with one person. Um, and I can also do non monogamy. Both of them work. I'm making a conscious choice. Or sometimes making a conscious choice of I don't do monogamy because I don't like all of the mononormative ideas that come along with it. So I will never explicitly be in a monogamous relationship, but I'm still seeing it as something that I'm choosing because it's what I believe in, not because it's something unalterable about myself. So I am not here to tell you whether for you, if you are exploring this or in this world, whether it's an identity or a choice, but just to illustrate that at least for some of us, this is definitely an identity, and it's a thing that has been present since long before we were sexual humans. And so just to, um, yeah, so just to bring it back around that this particular parent group. So if you don't already know, I have a parent group, a free twice monthly online group for non-monogamous parents. We meet, we chat about whatever's on people's minds. Sometimes we're exchanging stories about our experiences. Sometimes someone is bringing a specific challenge that they're having in a relationship and they're looking for wisdom from the community. Sometimes somebody is just like fed up with some stereotype or some question they've been asked 800 million times and they just want to get it off their chest. And so we have a little rant session, all kinds of things come out. And so this most recent time we met up, we talked about lots of other things, but it just happened to come out that all three of us that were there had figured out by the end of elementary school that non monogamy is how we naturally relate to the world. So I'm curious about your story. If you are non monogamous, and especially if you're a non monogamous parent, I'm super curious about, did you find non monogamy first or were you a parent first? Is this something that you've known about yourself for a really, really long time, consciously or unconsciously, but you can see it looking back? Or is this something that you're just figuring out whether or not it works for you, considering making a choice? In any of those, I'm really curious. You can let me know in the comments, but also I would love to actually have a chat with you about it because I'm really working on trying to figure out how to make this community for non monogamous parents more helpful and more useful and more effectively help connect people to the resources they need to make the decisions that help their family thrive. So if you are a non monogamous parent, I would love for you to hop on my website and set up a free 20-minute call. It's completely free, it's not a sales call. I really would like to just hear about what your experience is like and why you've made the choices you've made for your family, how that's working for you, so that I can help build a better resource for other people who are on this journey with us, trying to make the best decisions for their family. So you can find that link in the show description, and I look forward to connecting with you soon.